Delighted to be joined today by Kris Jones. Kris is a world-class orienteer and also a world-class athlete. He recently ran the Welsh Commonwealth standard for the 10,000 metres, and his story is a really interesting one. It's about consistent, constant progression over many, many years to the point where he is now one of the best athletes in the UK. There is a lot of lessons that can be learned from the story, and if you've got any questions, feel free to direct them my way. Cheers, guys.
Well, yeah. First of all, I hear you kind of had a bit of time off, but you're coming back into it. You had a bit of a femur stress reaction and then Lyme's disease as well.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a strange one because I had about 3 weeks after I ran the Birmingham 10,000 metres, I started getting this pain in my leg, and I actually had a week off, and it just didn't get any better. And then I had 3 weeks off, 2 weeks off, and it just wasn't getting any better. So I went for a scan, and I had sort of swelling on the bone. So no stress fracture, but a swelling on sort of the bone tissue. And then, so treated it like a bone injury. But I don't know if you know anything about bone injuries. Sort of, when you get one, you or at least I do, you try and read up as much as you can, and it tends to be if you've got if you've got risk factors. So if you've had big changes in your training, or you've got sort of issues with not getting in enough energy, or you're deficient in certain nutrients, and we were sort of going through everything, and I had blood tests, and it just seemed like there wasn't any sort of factor associated with it. And then sort of about 6 weeks after not running, we sort of remembered actually I'd had the tick bite on the back of my leg before the injury. And so I sort of said to the sports doctor I was talking to, do you think it's worth getting a Lyme's disease test? And she sort of ran it through and said, it'd be very strange, but you might as well. And yeah, so it came back positive, and I had 3 weeks of antibiotics, and it seems sorted now, and I haven't had any problems since. So it's either a kind of unlucky coincidence that the two happened at the same time, or it's kind of linked to the Lyme disease, really. So I had about 12 weeks off running. So the sort of 6 months at the back end of last year were not running and then building up running. So I'm happy to say I'm quite feeling quite good now. So hopefully, start stacking some training together, and
it sounds like it must have been almost a bit of a relief to find out that you had Lyme's disease, or was that not the case?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. It's one you hear about a lot when you do orienteering, because you get it from ticks, and you pick up ticks when you run through forests, and I've had lots of ticks before. And I think it's just bad luck, that this one happened to be one that was carrying the Lyme's disease, and so I was relieved to have like a reason behind the bone injury, because I think with bone injuries, one of the other things is if you don't sort out the risk factors, then you tend to get them recur. So I was kind of happy to have an explanation for that. It meant I could build up the training, a little bit quicker, maybe a bit more aggressively than I might have done otherwise. Although I was still really quite cautious. But equally, it's a bit of an unknown, because you do hear of people have these horrible consequences from Lyme's disease, sort of chronic fatigue, and, they'll be wiped for months and years at a time. So I'm kind of fortunate that, my case seemed to be quite mild and quite localized. So, so it is, positives. Certainly I was relieved to have an explanation, but it was a bit worrying then, going, well, is there going to be any sort of long-term issue? But no, so it's been okay so far.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you're on the mend. And I know that you're kind of building up, but does that mean you're kind of at the stage now where you feel like you can, you're fully training, or it's still building?
Yeah, I'm fully training. I'm still including a little bit of cross training, but that's more precaution and more sort of, I don't feel the need to, I think I ran 85 to 90 miles the last 3 weeks. And if you add in the cross training, that pushes it to, if I ran the hours I was on the bike, then potentially I'd have been over 100 miles. And it's a bit quick to build up to that. So, but, if I'm running over 100 miles, that's quite a big week, even sort of, if I'm training fully. So if I'm running 85 to 90, that's normal training. Doing some good sessions. Again, being a bit conservative with it all. Actually, I think, I think you actually get a lot of the benefit from, maybe the first 90% of the work, and actually the cautious thing to do is to do the basics, get really fit doing the basics. And then when I'm in good shape, which I'm not far off good shape, then you start to worry about sort of pushing the boundaries a bit again.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're, almost there. And then did you have any sort of ideas about when we might see you racing for the first time?
I'm running the inter-district cross country this weekend.
Okay.
Which is, I guess it's a smaller race than it used to be. It was always quite a big one on the Scottish cross country scene, because it was alongside the Great Edinburgh Cross, and then they moved Edinburgh to Stirling, and then they got rid of the international meet, and then it was a cross challenge, and now it's just a sort of a meet on its own. But that's this weekend, and it's as I say, I'm in good shape, but part of me is just itching to race, put in a big effort, and then you can almost get back to the consistency and the keeping a lid on things, and put another, string another few weeks together and sort of start to build. I'm kind of hoping I'll get to sort of March and be in pretty good shape, and then you can sort of plan out how the season looks in sort of more detail. But for the next couple of months, I'll just sort of pick up whatever sort of races fit in, and
Well, it's at least your injury came sort of 3 weeks after you got that Commonwealth standard.
It came at a very good time. It was well, it didn't come at a good time, but it could have come at a much worse time. Yeah, I actually think the tick that might have given me the Lyme's disease was the day after the 10K. I can't know, but that's the tick that I remember having and pulling out of that leg. And so it'd be pretty, it was pretty, it could have been much worse timing.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you a bit on all that a bit later, but I would love to sort of wind back a decade or so, or maybe even a bit longer, just to what your background in running and also obviously in orienteering, sort of what got you involved in both sports, really.
So I started first orienteering probably when I was about sort of 11 or 12, just locally in Swansea. My dad did it when he was younger, and he sort of took it up again and took the whole family along. And it's quite a good sport for that, because you can all go out and do sort of your own race, and there's sort of different levels of difficulty. So the kids do the sort of shorter, easier courses, and the parents go off and do longer courses. And then, sort of got involved in sort of running through that. Sort of after, a little while, I was like, my dad was going out for runs as well, so I'd join him, and then you sort of get involved in the sort of athletics then through school, and it's quite quickly I thought, if I can be good at running, I'll be better at orienteering, and it was always that way around. But I was good in school. I was a good runner. I was sort of making sort of county teams. So I ran for Avonmouth Towie schools, sort of this county team, and West Wales a couple of times. But it was always sort of, I was like more interested in the orienteering, and I sort of started off, there's a Welsh junior squad that did sort of lots of training weekends and the sort of home international races and stuff. So I did quite a lot of that. And I think first time I ran for GB was, I think I'd have been about 17, 18. It was European Youth Orienteering Championships. It was in Switzerland. So it sort of, I sort of got into it, family, but, by the time I was sort of 15, 16, I was pestering my dad to go to races rather than the other way around. So, yeah.
And what year was that race in Switzerland?
That would have been 2008.
Okay. So
so with orienteering, you quite often do, it's a little bit less physically intense than running, I'd say. Like it's difficult, but because you have to navigate, you're kind of always running at a sort of threshold level. And quite often you see orienteers race really frequently because of that. You can do multiple races on the same weekend if you're, kind of running them at a threshold level, and, the difficulties, the navigation and all of that. But the European Youth was, I think, a long distance, a relay and a sprint distance. So that would be I don't know what it would be for an 18-year-old, maybe sort of a 70-minute race, a 30-minute race and a 15-minute race. And I think I I think I might have been disqualified in the long distance. I think I punched the wrong checkpoint. I thought I was at the one I should have been at, and I wasn't. I think I ran quite well in the relay, but I can't remember what the team was. But I won the sprint. So it's quite a up and down weekend of races. But yeah, it's always I quite enjoyed that aspect of it. You could always race, and you just, almost as soon as you'd done a race, you were on to the next one.
And has running ever overtaken orienteering, or has it always been both?
Yeah. So the thing with orienteering, to train for orienteering, you need to have lots of good sort of difficult terrain. So you either need sort of lots of forest with sort of, that's good for orienteering, or, other sort of terrain. And we don't have much of it in the UK, sort of those sort of concentrated pockets of really good terrain. Lake District has a lot of good terrain. Sort of Scotland, some parts of Scotland have sort of concentrated pockets. But if you don't live near one of the sort of all this good sort of areas to orienteer on, you have to do a lot of traveling, or you have to move to somewhere that has it. So quite a few people I grew up racing against in orienteering have ended up moving out to Scandinavia, because they have a huge amount more sort of forest than we do. So they've got loads of great orienteering terrain. It's a much bigger sport out there. So there's a lot more support in terms of clubs and races and stuff like that. And I never really got on that path to sort of move somewhere with lots of terrain. Now the exception is the sprint distance. So it's like a 15-minute race, and it tends to be quite simple navigation. Like I think most people could probably navigate their way around sort of world champs level sprint course with, a little bit of coaching. This is what the map means. Here's an example. Whereas you couldn't do that with the middle or long distance. You wouldn't, you go into the forest and you might not find the first control. You might not find the first checkpoint. The difference is it's, or the difficulty of the sprint is that you're running at, potentially 3-minute Ks. You're running really fast and making sort of, the navigation isn't difficult, but some of the decisions are quite difficult. You're deciding between two different route choices, and, if you run an extra 100 meters, that's 20 seconds, extra on your race time, which for a 15-minute race could be the difference between winning a medal and not. And we've got loads of sort of really great sprint terrain in the UK. So, we've got lots of towns, lots of sort of either old towns or sort of council estates tend to be really sort of almost labyrinth. But you still need to travel, because, I run around Dundee an awful lot. And if you set me an orienteering course on most parts of the city, I'm going to have some advantage. So I quite quickly focused in on the sprint, and I did quite a lot of running in the relays as well, because the relays tend to be, it's still difficult navigation, still forest running, but it's you've got people around you. Most orienteering races are like time trials, so individual starts, but the relay is a mass start. So if I would run the first leg, I could use my good running speed, keep up with some of the others and use them a little bit to help navigation. But I was also, I said with the European Youth Champs, I won the sprint distance. I was always a little bit better at the sprint. I won a silver medal at the Junior World Champs in 2010. And it was always just easier to focus on that. I lived in the UK. We've got lots of sprint terrain. I can do sort of lots of good training. But as I say, you still need to travel. If not for training, you need to travel to compete. And I kind of found that war a little bit over the years. So I think probably sort of 2019, 2020, 2021, I was getting a little bit more fatigued with that fact that if you were racing, you'd have to travel, you'd have to sort of, it almost always seemed like a lot more effort to do orienteering. And when I was getting quite good at running as well, it's kind of easier. You have to travel to races, but you don't ever have to travel for training, really. You can train within, in your daily routine. But I kind of found, I found it a bit at the end of last year that I was just missing something. So when I was doing those track races in the summer, and I just found I did so few of them. Like, I think I raced 4 times last year. And part of that is COVID, I guess, because you can't, races weren't happening. But I just found that you put so much onto each single race. Whereas with the orienteering, you're always, you can race so much more and you get to do those sort of things. And then also with the track, like, part of me loves it, but part of me thinks, so much is focused on time, and you go into a race and you sort of taper and you put big build up onto it, and it's windy, or, the pacer goes off too fast or too slow, or, a group of people pull out of a BMC race, and all of a sudden it went from a great field to a, quite a sparse field. I just found, like, when you're only thinking about times, and it just kind of wore a bit. So I thought, actually, no, I want to get back to orienteering, because it's kind of just pure racing. It's normally a time trial start. It's only sort of you against, how fast can I do this? And so, I'm kind of, and the other thing is, so 2018, I was 3rd at the European Champs. So it's quite a European dominated sport. So, that's probably an equivalent field to the World Champs. 2016, I was 4th at the World Champs. And, I've been 2nd in a World Cup race. And part of me thought, well, there's something missing when I was quite legitimately one of the best. And when you sort of go onto the track then, and you're, you're not, I'm a very good track runner, don't get me wrong, but I'm not one of the best in the world. Whereas I'm one of the best in the world at sprint orienteering. And there's something quite powerful mentally that comes from that. And I quite want to carry that into everything else. So I sort of realized that actually if I'm giving up doing orienteering because it's hassle, I'm also giving up a lot more. I'm giving up something I enjoy, and I'm also giving up something that gives me a lot of confidence. So I think there's a balance to find, and yeah.
I think that's really interesting. I think it kind of can apply to anyone at any level, really. Not even you sort of chasing going Commonwealth Games, etc. But everyone sort of identifies themselves to some extent with how they are in running or whatever it is that they follow. How much your motivation would you say for running or for orienteering comes out of the enjoyment side of it?
Oh, huge amount of it. So I guess the key thing is I guess that I'm an amateur, right? So no one's paying me to do this. I've got a full-time job, and I do it as a hobby, both the orienteering and the running. And look, I get support. I get British Orienteering and Welsh Athletics have given me support, and I'm very grateful for the support I've had over the years. But at no point has it ever been an option for me to be a full-time athlete. And part of me, wouldn't want it.
Do you think that in terms of how much more pressure do you think that you would put yourself under? How much pressure do you put yourself under naturally to get a good performance? I mean, you were saying that you did 4 track races and they became a bit of a, there was so much on each and every one. It sounds like you were kind of putting yourself under that pressure anyway.
Yeah, but it's, I guess, I guess the difficulty is you can always step away. Like, I can go into, like, take Birmingham 10K, the 10,000 meter Olympic trial. I was pretty nervous for that because I kind of thought it was the last chance I had without sort of moving heaven and earth to run the time. There's not many sort of really stacked 10,000 meter races about. And I was pretty stressed before that race. I was pretty nervous, but at the end of the day, you've always got that crutch of, I want to be here. You're sort of there on the start line and you're really nervous, but you go like, well, would you really rather be anywhere else right now? And obviously the answer is no. Like that, even though it wasn't, the atmosphere wasn't anywhere near like Highgate of years gone by, it's still a really great atmosphere, sort of international race. But if you're turning up to, whatever half marathon at the end of October, and you need to place in the top 3 because you need prize money, and you've had a bit of a niggle, but you have to run because otherwise you're not gonna get another check until however many weeks down the line. That's not a sort of pressure, I think. That's a sort of pressure that I've never experienced, and I hope most athletes who are full-time don't ever experience, but I'm sure some do. So
yeah, I'm sure many do. I'd like to kind of ask you a bit on. So you kind of mentioned when you were a lot younger, you were a good regional athlete. You sort of competed a lot for West Wales, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the region that you the schools?
So I probably competed. I competed a couple of times for West Wales. It was Avonedd Tower, which is Swansea, effectively. Swansea and Neath.
Okay.
That's the sort of schools cross country region.
It's sort of looking at your results, and obviously it might be a bit masked if you're doing a lot of orienteering around it, and they might not have necessarily been particularly fair results, but it does seem like you made a significant step up from sort of 2015 to 2016. Is that kind of fair to say? And what did that kind of, could you put that down to anything, or?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say probably the step up started more around 2014 to 2015. And really it's mostly a change in circumstances. So September 2014, I started masters in Loughborough. And, you know, as an undergraduate, I was maybe less structured. I went to Loughborough in a great training environment, lots of structure. I think I improved quite a lot that year. And then in 2015, I started my PhD. And the good thing about my PhD, so my PhD is through the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland. But the whole time I've been based in Scotland because it's funded by the R&A, which are the governing body of golf, as I say. And the whole time I was based in an office. So I never really tested it, but when everyone else in your office arrives at 9 and leaves at 5, you know, you can't work like an undergraduate and do all your work at 9 o'clock in the evening as you're sort of cramming before the next day. Like, you just get a better structure to your life and a bit more routine. And I think, you know, the big step up that year was probably just putting weeks and weeks of consistency together. You know, I think my training sort of progressed really nicely all the way through from sort of 2010 through to 2016, and it just got a little bit better, a little bit more volume, a little bit, you know, more consistent, a little bit, you know, the sessions got a little bit better, and it got a little bit more, I don't know, structured. And sort of 2016, as you start or 2015, and I started an office job, as it were. It's just quite an easy environment to be consistent in. And sort of, I think, now, you know, you can look at it as a positive in terms of, you know, if you have that work environment, you know, it sort of defines what you do for 8 hours of the day. And so if you don't get up and train before work, likelihood is you're not going to run 2 sessions that day. You're not going to. So, I think that's what I put it down to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's sort of getting a bit of structure, and then there's going from sort of, well, at least what it appears going. I'm just looking at your results, but going in 2015, and this might not have been a fair reflection at all, but you ran 32:30 for 10,000 meters, and we're going back 6 years later, and you've run 4 minutes quicker, and you've run 28:22. Did you ever have, like, just looking back to when you were 2014, 2015, or when you were just sort of falling into that structure and just enjoying the sport, did you ever have any idea of how far you wanted to go, of where you felt you were capable of sort of reaching?
No, and I think So the 32 was, I think, Bucks 10K, I guess.
Yeah.
On the track. Yeah, that was not a good race. That was the first 10K I'd done on the track, and I hated it. It was really, really not a good race for me. And I think, I was getting more and more structure through those years, but my fitness did sort of go up and down. I don't know. I think that, say 2016, I kind of hit a really good sort of, I was really fit in the summer of 2015. There was a World Orienteering Championships was in Scotland, and I ran, and I came 8th in the sprint. And that was kind of a breakthrough, just getting in the top 10. And I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think that was a ridiculously close year. So I might have been sort of 10 seconds off a medal or something. Previous to that, I'd run 2 world champs, and I'd come, I think, 16th and 18th. And so it was a step up. Then, 2016, I made another step up. I went to World Orienteering Champs again. I came 4th. I actually came 4th in three races: the sprint relay, and the relay. But I sort of compounded the fitness, and I started to sort of, I guess, show it a bit more. I think 2016 I raced more on the track and on the road and on the cross country. 2015 I was still kind of an orienteer doing running races, whereas 2016 I started to go, I quite enjoy, and there's a good sort of circuit in Scotland of sort of domestic races through cross country, and then sort of road and track, so you're always racing the same people, and it's quite fun. But to answer your question, no, I kind of, I've always just looked at next step. So there's been quite a few stages where I've surprised myself. I think I ran the Scottish 5K champs on the track, and I kind of wanted to run, a good deal under 15. I sort of thought, I could run 14:45 or 14:40. I ran 14:20. And so there's been a few sort of occasions where that's happened. I was always kind of confident that I could represent Wales in something. So cross country, or I was kind of thought, if I can be as good as I can be, I could get a Welsh Fest. I kind of never thought I'd get to the GB stage. That sort of never, I never really thought it was an option. And as I got better and better, I thought maybe I could scrape a vest for the Edinburgh Cross. And so that was kind of an aim for a little while. And I actually got the vest earlier than I thought, because I ran Highgate and got a call up for the European 10K Cup. So it's kind of like little things surprising myself along the way. But as I say, just kind of thinking about the next step, not sort of worrying about what is far down the line. Yeah.
So you kind of you had this. I will wrap this up at 9.
That's all right.
But don't worry. But this I've kind of said you've had this kind of spectacular rise, but you have also had probably a few years where you kind of, I wouldn't say plateaued, but you didn't keep having those breakthrough performances, so to speak. Did you kind of feel that you'd kind of reached the ceiling? Did you ever question whether you'd reached the ceiling, or did you still think you had room to grow?
I kind of think, no, so I get what you mean. I kind of, I struggled a bit in sort of 1920, just with little injuries that kind of sort of sap your progress. And I actually think, so I think I've relatively consistently shown progress, but it's tended to be in different things. So like, and it's kind of like I was saying with, in 2015, I think I progressed, but, the main event where I showed it was an orienteering race. And then, sick. And so it's things like, my 5K PB's been static since 2017, I think, Loughborough. And I've been in shape where I could have run faster than that. And I've potentially been in races where I could have run faster than that and got it wrong. But in the sort of years, I've either improved my half marathon or my 10K. And so it's kind of just looking at things and going, right, okay, can I show some progress? Can I improve on something and not necessarily trying to improve on everything? But as I say, there's a couple of years in there where I had Achilles injury 2 years in a row, and it kind of saps a couple of months out of the year. And as I say, my big improvement came from, stacking weeks of consistency together. And when you're having to sort of cross train and get on the bike, you lose that. So that was actually, so I was always self-coached until about a year and a half ago. So sort of June or July 2020. And I was, so I asked Kris Jones from Welsh Athletics to coach me. And I know that's hilarious because I went from being self-coached to being coached by Kris Jones. But part of that was just, when you're self-coached and you get in these little nagging injuries, it kind of saps, a lot of confidence because you're going, oh, well, was that my fault? Was that? Whereas actually, if you're having that sort of coaching relationship, like Kris is good because he kind of knows that I know enough to adjust certain things, so we can have the conversation of, oh, look, Kris, I was feeling, really run down. We just had to switch the session from Tuesday to Wednesday because, or we have to change what the session was, and it's like fine, but it's just having that sort of long-term view of this is what we need to be working on. This is the next 6 months, and almost that accountability of, if it's much harder to, turn around and, if you get a little niggle, it's much harder to turn around to someone else and say, this is your fault, than to do it in your head to yourself. It's much harder to do it. And because you have, we all know sort of when you're talking to yourself in your head, it can be like, you can get negative really quickly. So it's just getting out of that sort of spot, really. Sorry, I can talk for ages. So
no, it's really. I was just trying to get a strand of hope for anyone who's, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years behind you, and they want that. They want that hope that in 8 years' time they can run 28, 22. And
they would, like, no one would have picked at school that I'd be running, I potentially be in the frame to run for Wales at the Commonwealth Games. Like, I kind of picked that out because I think for me, and like I say, I come from the background as like, I'm an amateur, as I said before. Like, I kind of do the same as anyone else in in a running club. I'm training in my spare time. I'm buying my own shoes. It's essentially a hobby. I just spend an awful lot more time doing it. But like, I think the Commonwealth Games, you see a lot more of those athletes. And I think those are the stories that every time the Commonwealth Games comes around, you kind of, almost, at least I do, I kind of latch onto. It was like in Glasgow, it was like Steve Way. The story, he was a smoker and overweight, and then he's running the Commonwealth Games for England. And in Australia, it was Robbie Simpson. Like, and I know he's he's a very good mountain runner, and he is full time, but no one expected it. And he's someone I know, and he's quite down to earth, and he's I've raced him a lot. And it's just those stories, I think, come across so much in the Commonwealth Games. So it's quite like but yeah, no one would have picked me for it. No one would have said, if you were watching Swansea Harriers train in 2006, you wouldn't have said, "Oh yeah, that's the one." I think it's the interesting but incredibly frustrating thing about distance running is training takes years and years, and it's like I was quite good because I was achieving at orienteering, and so I could take 5 years to build up my training. From 2010 to 2015, it was a little bit better each year. It was a little bit better, but I was still in elite sport. I was still improving. I was sort of, I felt like I was an athlete. I wasn't running fast times on the track or anything, but I was, I was running for GB, for British Orienteering. And, I had the aim of, initially, I want to get selected for the World Champs, and then I want to go and improve my result of the World Champs. And so those things kind of keep you, keep you moderated. Because I think that the temptation is you go and say, right, I want to be, I've got all this motivation to be really good. I'm going to do it all, and I'm going to go really hard. But it's the consistency, and it's like the only way you build up consistency is maybe by, being a step back. And so actually, because I was focusing on orienteering, I have these sort of dual things to juggle, the sort of navigation training and the running training. And so it kind of didn't matter that maybe my running training wasn't as optimal as it could be, because, it's always going to be a balance. Yeah.
Just, step by step and consistency, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks a lot for your time and having a bit of a chat. My only last question is just I think it's the World Orienteering Champs at the end of June. Is that right? And then you would, in theory, run the Commonwealth Games at the end of July. Is that
start
right?
of August.
Yeah,
start of August. But yeah,
start of August. So,
yeah.
Is your plan to try and do both of them?
That is the plan. We will. Yeah, that's the plan. I will be sort of keeping everything sort of ticking over and trying to progress on both of those as goals. But yeah, you can't really know until you're in the thick of it, you know, whether both are possible. You know, there's a chance I might not get selected for either. You know, I hope I will, and I hope I can. You know, there's a chance that just the logistics don't work out, and you know, I don't know what COVID situation we're going to be like in the summer, but if it's a 2-week quarantine to get back into the UK, then you know I'm unlikely to want to risk being 4 weeks out from the Commonwealth Games. So it depends on things like that. But yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Good luck for both of them. I think it's a really interesting story, background, orienteering, and then just your consistent progression. And yeah, touch wood, you just stay healthy, and then yeah, I think you more than earned your Commonwealth slot. So if you're healthy, I don't see why you wouldn't be there.